In the vein of mass weaponized human migration, there is one man who stands down in Texas, and he is prepared. He is the prepper of all preppers. You know him as Mike Adams, the health ranger. I know him as just a really great guy that I've looked up to and respected for years and have the privilege of being on his network. But I want to talk to Mike today about the invasion that's coming across his state, but also how, we as Americans need to prepare for what's coming because of this upside down, inside out world that we're being funneled through. Mike, always great to see you. Thank you so much.
And it's great to be with you here today. You're doing amazing work, you and Michael Yan with Operation Burning Edge. I talk about you all the time with my other interview guests as well. You're doing great work. We're thrilled to have you on our network.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you. So again, people really do value what you have to say when it comes to being prepared. And you have gone way out over and above to make sure not only your family, but your community is prepared. And you spend a lot of your time talking to people about what is coming. You've been preparing people for years, as long as I've known you, but now it's sort of like, so maybe it's a little anticlimactic in some ways, because I think we're here, and the fruits of the labor of the globalist elite that like to destroy America so they can just take over the world is being reaped right now as they sow. And we're watching your state particularly just get overrun. So from that perspective, what's it like to be a Texan living in a state that's supposed to be, surrender, protect the Alamo, and you're watching your state go down in flames right now as Abbott's policies are just pathetic at this point?
Well, yeah, Abbott is disappointing Texans right now, but have no fear. The Texas spirit is strong. I've been a prepper for over 30 years, and I've been carrying a firearm daily for over 30 years. And plus, of course, everyday carry, knives and such. So I'm a real hardcore prepper, but I'm also a prepper in terms of natural medicine, food production, having off-grid technology in order to be able to survive, water filtration, also having like a power generator, a PTO generator that runs off of a tractor, stockpiling some diesel, being able to generate my own electricity off-grid using diesel fuel, things like that. And I've taught a lot of people those skills over the years. I believe that we are about to face a real illegal immigration insurrection in America. I call it Activation Day. And there's a percentage of the millions of illegals who have crossed the border, who have occupied America, as you well know, but there's a percentage of them. And my estimate is anywhere from 500,000 to 1 million illegals are actually enemy combatants. And they were sent here by various countries, including communist China, in order to await activation orders. And as they've been here, they have infiltrated our societies. They have infiltrated local government, school boards, corporations as well. And they're waiting for activation orders. Those orders will have them carry out massive, widespread sabotage of U.S. infrastructure. Some of these, and I have multiple intel sources as you do, and they're probably very different sources. I have former military intelligence, Army intelligence sources and so on, former DEA, former DIA, former FBI, you get the idea. And they tell me repeatedly that explosive vests have been smuggled across the border. Some of them are kinetic vests. Some of them are vests that will be combined with radioactive material to make explosive vests like suicide dirty bombs, okay?
Right. That's
in America right now. The U.S. State Department has said that ground-to-air missiles, anti-aircraft missiles that can be run by 2 men have gone missing in America. They came across the border and they've gone missing, okay? So on Activation Day, as I call it, sometimes Purge Day, we're going to see America's infrastructure attacked and sabotaged like never before. Our refineries will be hit. Our police stations will be attacked. There will be a slaughter of law enforcement across America. I'm sad to say, because I support law enforcement, but I know how ill prepared they are for what's coming. There will be attacks on bridges, on ports. There will be poisoning of waterways and attacks on the power grid. So America is about to be brought to her knees. And when that day comes, Ann, especially in Texas, that will be the mass awakening. That will be a turning point, because the people of Texas will fight back, and they will succeed. The spirit of America cannot be defeated. It will rise up again, but we're going to have to go through a very difficult collapse, chaos, anarchy time before that comes.
So you really have painted a Grim Reaper picture, and this has been their plan for a long time. If you go back and you do any reading on any of the people that are the owners of this planet, the Committee of 300, the elder families, you know that they've always had an oligarchical war of control. And today we now see an unlikely duo of the World Economic Forum, which is the creatures like the Rothschild, Rockefellers, et cetera, and that whole group of people partnering with the CCP, both of whom eventually will war with each other again because they all want to rule the world. And it's not about money anymore because they've got quadrillions of it. It's about power, and it's about an anti-God, anti-human agenda. I mean, these people have a completely different, warped opinion of everything, and they're using mass human weaponized migration or weaponized mass human migration as chess pieces on the board to destabilize countries. They've done this for years. In fact, our own intelligence agencies, partnering with other agencies around the world, have perfected the art of the color revolution, and using weaponized mass human migration to destabilize countries around the world. They've just now perfected it out CONUS, and they're now bringing it CONUS back home to the United States of America. And again, they do this because they're after the world control, and America's in the way at this point.
Well, yes, and let me add something that's very important here, that the U.S. military, the National Guard bases across America have been completely depleted of weapons.
Right. Because
they've sent them all to Ukraine and some to Israel. So the recent bill that was passed, Speaker Johnson, the $95 billion in funding, most of that money is just going to try to manufacture weapons to replace what's already missing from the National Guard bases across this country. What actually happened was illegally entire stockpiles of defensive continental weapons, artillery rounds, tank rounds, anti-aircraft rounds, anti-tank systems, javelin systems, so all of that was sent over to Ukraine already. The passing of this bill is simply, again, just to manufacture, to restore what belongs in America. But again, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's going to be years before the manufacturing can even spend all that money. And between now and then, America is more vulnerable than it has ever been. There are virtually no defenses in America against invaders right now.
It's like they've strip mined us of everything. They've strip mined us of our common sense and education with the fifth generation warfare and the psychological operations that have been ongoing for decades, manifested through Hollywood thanks to the CIA and their weaponized MK Ultra and their programming of our minds. And now they're just doing it in the open, and they're showing us what they're going to do, a la what was the recent movie, the End of the World or Leave the World Behind, and now they've got Civil War out. But they've strip mined everything. Our manufacturing, as you just said, our food supply has been completely strip mined. We've witnessed how many food processing plants, Mike, are we up to now that have just burned down or had plane crashes flying into them?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number. It's somewhere around 200.
That's what I thought.
More at this point. But there's a deliberate effort to shut down farms at this point now.
The farms. There's under the CO2 auspices, carbon control, carbon footprint, but they'll sell carbon credits, basically manufacturing a carbon credit as a general ledger entry and selling it to the Bill Gateses of the world so they can fly their planes around spewing carbon. And the rest of us, well, we have to eat bugs, and we have to like it, and we have to drive electric cars.
Right. Or walk around your 15-minute cities as a slave. But there's something even more. The bird flu fakery, okay? The pandemic hoaxes are going to be used to destroy the food supply. It's already happening. In Texas, they destroyed 2 million chickens recently because they said, well, we detected bird flu in one of the chickens, okay? So the PCR tests are a total scientific fraud. Right. I know this. I run a food science lab. We are ISO accredited, inspected, audited. I'm a published food scientist in a peer-reviewed science journal. I've developed food testing methodologies. I actually met with the PCR equipment manufacturers and salespeople, and I asked them the questions, how do we get quantitation curve calibration out of this equipment? And they said, you don't. There's no quantitation. You can't detect concentrations of anything. And I said, well, how do we even get a standard if we're going to test for COVID? Where do we get an isolated standard of COVID viral particles? It doesn't exist. You download these databases online and it tells you a protein sequence, and then you have a match with that. I'm like, that would not even qualify for ISO accreditation if I did that with heavy metals. Like if I were testing food for lead and I didn't have a lead standard, I would fail the accreditation. But they do that with bird flu, H5N1, Ebola, COVID, all of it. And it's all a fraud. It's a complete and absolute fraud, but they're using it to destroy the food supply.
And do you think that the people coming across the border right now have any knowledge of the level of complexity of this fifth generation warfare being leveled against the United States
No.
to allow them the carte blanche access?
No, most of the illegals are
downstream
pawns.
effects? Do they understand the downstream effects of what's coming when everything is gone? Money, food, everything?
No, almost nobody does, frankly. I mean, it's only people like you and I and Michael Yon and others who are really paying attention, who know what's coming. But understand that many of these migrants have been promised housing in America, that you will be given like this sector, you can take over this suburb because all the people who live there right now are going to be gone. Well, where are they going? Well, they're going to be exterminated. I mean, this is a replacement extermination war against America. That's what this is. Understand that the American people are being exterminated through the bioweapons injections, through engineered famine and starvation, and through warfare. And it probably won't be long. I mean, again, Michael Yon talks about these three things all the time. It won't be long before Americans are forced to join the military and go die for Israel or die for Ukraine. Joe Biden wants a 10-year war with Russia. Well, Ukraine doesn't have 10 years more of men. They're out now. They're done. Where are they going to get the men? Well, American men. So this is the plan, to conscript young American males, and maybe women too, send them to die overseas and then replace them with the illegal invaders who are already occupying our country. That's the blueprint right in front of us.
Yeah. And, shockingly so, today is April 30th. Matt Gaetz was in Congress and Lloyd Austin was testifying before Congress. And Gaetz asked Austin if he says, will we, be seeing shots fired from Gaza at U.S. troops, and will U.S. troops return fire? And again, this is the same Lloyd Austin that, mandated the shots on the military, disabled our military, in addition to all the weapons caches that had been sent overseas and left us basically defenseless. Yes. Our nuclear weapons, who even knows what the state is of those, the status of those is at this point in time, in terms of readiness. How often are we actually running real tests to know if these things would even deploy if we had to defend ourselves? But at that point, it's mutually assured destruction. So frankly, what is the point, right? We don't want to be on offense on something like that. And if we're on defense, well, that means everything is gone anyway. So,
well, America will lose that exchange with Russia. So I just want to be clear. Russia's anti-air defense systems really work. The SA-400s are very effective, and they can shoot down many incoming ICBMs. In addition, Russia has a network of vast underground bunkers, to protect their populations from incoming nuclear strikes. America has neither of those things. America will be destroyed.
Except for Congress. Let's not forget, Congress is protected. They have their emergency bug out location. They'll be fine. We'll have continuity of government, but there'll be nothing to govern, which maybe is what they want.
Bunker. Yeah, exactly. And actually, you've hit upon a really important point. I believe that Joe Biden and his insane State Department are intentionally trying to provoke nuclear war with Russia in order to halt the election and to try to stay in power, even if it means hundreds of millions of Americans die in a nuclear holocaust. That's how desperate and insane they are at this point. They don't care who they kill, and they need a big crisis, like nuclear big. And you probably saw just in the last couple of days, you listen to Lavrov and Medvedev out of Russia, you listen to them talk, and they're saying, look, if NATO deploys troops over here, we're going to annihilate France, okay? We're going to send a radioactive tidal wave tsunami of ocean water to inundate the United Kingdom, and we're going to destroy decision centers in the United States of America. They are telling you what they're going to do. They're going to nuke the West, and there's nothing the West can do to stop those Russian nukes. They have hypersonic glide vehicle, reentry vehicles. There's nothing that America can do to stop it.
So we have an invasion at the border, destabilization. We have strain and stress on the welfare system in this country. We've been printing money into an oblivion to fund the military-industrial complex, to also send over weapons and send whatever we can, plus manufacture whatever we can, send it to Ukraine. We
Right.
cannot pay the interest on this debt anymore. We're really at the point of literally going bankrupt. And yet these immigrants coming here, the illegals, the invaders, as Michael and I call them, are dependent on the minimally $2,200 a month they get from the federal government, plus 3 hots and a cot in an overhead, in an air-conditioned and heated facility, while our homeless veterans, that $20 billion would have solved the homeless crisis in this country. But yet we can't send $20 billion this way. We're sending hundreds of billions out of the country. And yet today you have the majority of the Americans that are actually believing that the people who are trying to come here into the United States have worse character than those who came here 50 years ago. And if you want to add fuel to that fire, an actual U.S. tech workers put this out on Twitter, where they said this is to be expected as American citizens were stripped of the ability to determine who gets to come here. Since the passing of the 1965 Hart-Celler Act, policymakers began lowering immigration standards based on the intersex of ethnic and business lobbies. With standards lowered and no incentives for new immigrants to Americanize, immigrants' relationship with America has become transactional. More than that, we've been homogenized, and forcefully so, to dissolve culture, dissolve our way of life. And again, at the end of the day, the people that are come here, like you said, Mike, are just pawns, because they'll be obliterated in the entire process, as the rest of us are either starved out or bombed out or whatever, the pandemic'd out, right?
Yeah, yes, and understand that this is only the first chapter of a much larger extermination wave. So right now, the illegal invaders, the mission for them is to replace the American people. So the American people are being exterminated through bioweapons injections and through war and starvation, and also financial collapse, which is being engineered, like Building 7. But that's just stage one. Then the next stage is that the immigrants, the invaders, will be wiped out by the terminators. So we're talking about the rise of AI-controlled humanoid robotic systems. You saw the recent release of the flame-throwing robot dog, I assume.
Yes.
That's a very real thing, but drones. So hunter-seeker drones, like right out of Terminator, with thermal cameras, will seek out and exterminate human beings, regardless of their nationality, all over the country, until the globalists get the population down to the levels that they want. So understand, this is a two-phase thing. They're using the illegals to eliminate the Americans. Then they'll use the robots to eliminate the illegals. And what they want left is a world where there's fewer than, let's say, 500 million people. It's the global elite, the continuity of government. They've got enough engineers in order to program the robots and, oversee some robot manufacturing, but everything else is fully automated. And this is a purely demonic agenda for the mass extermination of the human race. They intend to exterminate 7.5 billion human beings. They've only just barely begun. COVID was not even a warm-up round. It was just a pilot program to see if they could get away with the obedience demands, and they did. So what's coming next will be far worse.
Talk to me a little bit about the climate hoax agenda. That we've already heard rumor that the mushroom in the White House, through edict from his globalist puppet masters, are going to have him declare a climate emergency, which of course is a national emergency, which will give him unprecedented power to lock us down, whatever he needs to do. But juxtapose that with the hypocrisy of this weaponized mass human migration and the flood of illegals into our country. And by accounts, according to Customs and Border Protection, who put it out on Twitter, they say there's between about 46 million illegals in the country since 2021. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick echoing the same thing maybe a month before.
I had not heard that high of a number.
Well, he estimated between 40 and 60 million illegals in the country several months earlier. This is Lieutenant Governor of your state, Dan Patrick, and he actually worked very closely with your Attorney General, Ken Paxton, who is a hero to me, because we don't have one of those in Florida. She's, I don't know where she's out. She's out to lunch, Ashley Moody. But he's, they work diligently to investigate Colony Ridge and to get that going, and to, enforce the fact that law enforcement should be able to arrest an illegal and get them in the deportation cycle if they're found in Texas and picked up. That's bare minimum. You have a constitution that gives every state the right to do that. But this is sort of like an added layer, I guess, because maybe they needed to remind themselves of their constitutional responsibilities. So when you talk about a climate hoax and that, they're really, putting a noose tightly around America and forcing us to pony up into the Paris Accord, and what is it, over 8 years, it'd be $4 trillion or something, or $2 trillion. It was a ridiculous number. China is building at least one coal-fired plant per week coming online. in China, and they're not burning clean coal. That's China and India, by the way. How do we square that when their population far supersedes ours, and they're, free to do whatever they need to because they're still classified an emerging economy? We aren't. We're a fully developed economy, which, in my opinion, is going in the wrong direction because we're losing our economic superpower status quickly with the offshoring of manufacturing jobs. But we're adding more people, which means we need more power. So why would they want an open borders policy to drive the needs of power up when they're telling us we have to use less? How do they justify that?
Well, the climate hoax has been weaponized in order to attack and sabotage the energy infrastructure by claiming to be rolling out government policies that protect the planet. So as you know, Anne, civilization is not possible without energy. And an affordable food supply is the number one output of affordable energy. When you're buying food at the grocery store, you're essentially buying affordable fossil fuels that have been converted into food. So by citing the climate hoax, and it is a massive hoax, and most of the scientists in all the areas that cover it, they're just getting paid, they're getting grant money in order to produce the results that are desired by the establishment. So these so-called scientists are really just science whores who are just getting paid to make up, fake things. Oh, climate change is responsible for marriages breaking up. Climate change is responsible for toenail fungus. Climate change is responsible for everything, right? It's all fake, right? But if they can shut down the energy supply, which is Europe has led the way on this, Europe has really destroyed its domestic energy, and there are giant gas fields that are now completely locked up, shut down, that they cannot access. And you're seeing the collapse of industry across Western Europe. And this also was exacerbated by the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline, which Joe Biden promised that if Russia invaded Ukraine, that Nord Stream would no longer exist. He said it. That's almost word for word. The U.S. destroyed Nord Stream, which destroyed Germany's industry, and it also affected France's industry. You're seeing a total industrial collapse, and now the attacks on food and farms across Europe. This is the total destruction of Western Europe as any kind of a sustainable civilization. It's underway. It's accelerating rapidly. That's been a blueprint for what they're doing to America. So remember, when Joe Biden stole the election, occupied the White House, the very first thing he did on day one, January 21 of 2021, I believe? January
20th of 2021.
20th, yeah. He signed the shutting down of pipelines and energy infrastructure and the exploration of offshore energy. Right. That was the strangulation of America by shutting off its energy arteries. And without energy, again, you can't have a country. And since then, Joe Biden has put America on an absolute suicide path. And now, by the way, did you see that Anthony Blinken just visited China and demanded that China stop producing so much stuff and said to China, we're going to dictate who you're allowed to sell to. You can't sell to Russia. You can't sell to whoever, because we're America. We tell the whole world what to do. And China laughed in his face and said, get the hell out of here, you puny creature. Get back on your plane, fly back to your collapsing nation. We in China, we're gonna keep producing things efficiently. So that's what just happened.
Yeah, we've definitely had our backside handed to us by the emerging countries, right? The Chinas of the world that are still classified as emerging countries. And again, we should thank our government for giving China the position that it has, not only in the World Trade Organization, the WTO, but frankly, allowing them to have the energy independence that they do, just to build dirty coal plants whenever they want, whenever they need.
That's right. They can have cheap energy.
Cheap energy for them, and we have to pay out the nose. It's quite interesting when I look at this. I like to divide the world into sensical pieces, right? So we clearly know BRICS is growing very, very quickly, and BRICS didn't happen overnight. This has been 20 plus years in the making, right? So we're now seeing the what used to be the Bretton Woods, right? When the United States in the 40s said, okay, Saudi Arabia and the rest of the world, if we trade oil in dollars, we will provide your country's security if you trade oil in dollars. So that was the exchange we initially engaged with the Saudis. The BRICS are doing the same thing. We've just seen Russia and China basically set up a national security reciprocation, as well as they'll trade using each other's currencies. So understanding they represent 95% of the world's population, 75% of the world's GDP, do you expect to see a lot of the mass migration to continue to come out of state sponsors of terror, countries that are, ostensibly going to enter into the BRICS at some point because they're either in the application process or they're already accepted?
Well,
like
in
Iran?
The larger picture, the BRICS nations ultimately know that they, just by launching their own honest currency, and the BRICS currency is going to be a commodities-backed, blockchain-driven settlement currency between nations, corporations, and individuals worldwide. And no nation will be able to counterfeit that currency. And that's the key factor to understand. The way that the United States empire has been able to commit so much genocide and colonization around the world since World War II is by counterfeiting its own currency and dishonestly looting the people and using it to bludgeon other countries. And the US doesn't want to engage in any kind of competition or free market interaction with other countries. The US doesn't want to compete. They want to just bludgeon everybody else into destruction. I mean, the US destroyed Nord Stream in order to destroy Europe so that the US could appear stronger than the UK, for example. The US is actually Europe's worst enemy, not Russia. Russia is Europe's best friend, frankly.
Very true.
But they don't realize that. However, the BRICS nations know that they don't have to even really attack America to destroy America. All they have to do is stop using the dollar. Really.
Right.
So, I mean, all the invasion of America, that in their minds, they're trying to accelerate the destruction of America. It's not even necessary. When the dollar collapses, America will destroy itself from within. America will burn because it's the money printing. It's the only machine that keeps this system going. It's a debt-based Ponzi scheme that's on the verge of systemic catastrophic collapse. And if you look at the difference between the Soviet Union collapse in 1991, when that happened, the Russian people were still able to get by because they already had well-developed black markets. They had peer-to-peer trading. They grew some of their own food. They knew how to bypass the government. I mean, they were living under communism. How do you survive under communism? You have to build networks, right?
Right.
The Soviet people were living under sanctions. They knew how to survive. The American people don't know how to survive for the most part, except preppers like us. And so when the dollar collapses, the American people will suffer such a catastrophic failure of the systems upon which they normally depend. The grocery store, the Home Depot, free government money, a power grid working reliably, all of that will be gone overnight because the BRICS nations no longer need the dollar, which means nobody will buy the dollar debt. Who will buy the dollar debt?
Well, they're trying to offload their countries are trying to dump treasuries right now.
Exactly.
And
they're dumping treasuries and buying gold.
With the 10-year, I think, just hit 5%, right? They're having to jack the yields up to get anybody to buy any of this stuff. It's junk bond status.
15%.
Yeah.
I mean, U.S. debt is going to be downgraded worldwide to junk status.
Yeah, it should have been downgraded a long time ago. It's junk now because the full faith and credit of the United States isn't the government. It's the people, and the people are now, forcibly being forced into bankruptcy at this point. Look at how many people can't afford to buy houses now because interest rates, et cetera. So then I bring it back to, let's go right into your community there in Texas. You are prepared. I have no doubt that the lights could go out in this very second and your lights would stay on and you would have food and it would be like, yeah, okay, not missing a beat here. Only problem is you might not be able to reach people because they don't have power. Their cell phones aren't working. They didn't get a SAT 123 phone, from the satellite phone store so that they could bypass the cellular system with a solar charger and still stay in communications. Little plug there. But at this point, you're prepared. So what is your life and the community that you have integrated with going to be like, and how you relate to others? What does that plan look like? Because this is your expertise. So I want to know. We've just set the table of everything that's going to happen here. So now let's show people how you can survive this. Okay.
Well, thank you for asking. Of course, we've modeled what's going to happen. Phase 1 is survive the zombies. Okay. So first you have to survive all the unprepared masses who are going to turn to desperation, looting, criminal behavior, carjacking, whatever. That's even if we have fuel that works. So stage 1 is survive the zombie wave. After that, and they won't last very long because starvation doesn't take very long, by the way. Right. So within about 90 days, there's going to be a massive die-off. And there will be, of course, large gangs that form up of raiders who will try to raid, rural properties, and they will continue to get supplies and so on. So the way it's going to look is that local communities will need to organize their own self-defense with local law enforcement, community leaders, typically veterans, former cops and so on, hunters and what have you. It's going to be a very firearms intensive community defense. And the aim there is to restore local trade and safe travel on local roads and commerce as quickly as possible. Once local commerce is working again, which will probably function with silver and gold, or gold backs, or people trading ammo, bartering seeds, things like that, then you'll be able to get your community back on its feet. Now, we won't be using the dollar, obviously, in that scenario. The dollar will be done. And so the people who stored silver or gold or seeds or ammo or whatever, 9mm ammo, it's going to be the universal currency, right? If you stored that, you're going to be the new wealthy. But the former wealthy in your society that just had paper wealth, they will be destitute, because paper wealth won't matter. It doesn't matter. Oh, you had numbers on your screen on your bank account? It's gone, by the way. It's gone.
Right.
So everything's going to flip upside down, and people who know how to repair things are going to be the new wealthy. So, your air conditioner guy or your plumber guy with his, gorgeous plumber's butt is going to be now the new ultra wealthy plumber. You know what I mean?
Yeah, hot. Bring that crack over here. That's hot.
Yeah, exactly. Fix my plumbing so we can have civilization again. I don't care about your plumber's butt. Just fix the plumbing. You're going to have now people who know how to do things are going to be the new community leaders. And then from there, you're going to have communities then forming up with other communities. You're going to have the reformation of things like the Republic of Texas, for example, or I don't know what's going to happen in Florida, but you're going to have community leaders rebuild the country. And at that point, frankly, a lot of the unprepared people just won't be around.
Right.
And so it's going to be a completely different conversation. And I hope that conversation is in part like, how do we restore the original vision of America, the founding fathers' vision? How do we keep government small forever more, right? How do we have honest currency? Well, frankly, you got to have something that governments can't counterfeit. So you have to have gold backed, or you have to maybe use crypto for digital exchanges and make sure it's an honest ledger. Like, Bitcoin is an uncounterfeitable ledger, right? So there are a lot of different options here. Go ahead.
So here's something I just learned yesterday. I've been talking to Daniel Diaz, somebody that you need to know, Center for Sound Money, Citizens for Sound Money, excuse me. He has been traveling around the country, and at one point we had 22 states that were somewhere in the pipeline of getting their own digital gold-backed blockchain. And over the course of the last few months, they all sort of fizzled out, or as the legislatures are getting ready to go on summer break, they just kind of died in committee or whatever. Yesterday, breakthrough, that would be April 29th, Missouri, Senate Bill 735 passed the Senate. And on Wednesday, May 1st, it goes into the House. Now, with any luck, we believe the House and Democrats crossed over and voted for this. The House will pass the bill, and then the governor of Missouri will sign it, which is quite fascinating because Missouri will be the first state with a gold-backed digital blockchain. And to me, that is a massive step, which I think will create that inertia again to rekindle those other 21 states or 26 states. I think I got up to 27 at one point, to come back around and go, you know what, we really do need to decouple from this Federal Reserve, which is not federal and has no reserves, and get off this corrupt banking system and give our citizens of our state, which I think will also be somewhat of a catalyst for the breakup of the 50-state, United States back into the Union, and we'll see how that shuffles out from there in terms of alliances and all of this stuff.
This is critical planning. The states that already have this ready will flourish.
Correct.
I want to encourage your viewers, imagine, wherever you live, imagine how much wealth you could create and your community could create if, number one, the U.S. government wasn't looting the value of your money every day by printing money.
Right.
Thereby devaluing the money you've already earned. And then secondly, if you had to pay no federal taxes whatsoever. Okay. Those two things, how much more wealth, how much more investment in the local community would happen? I'm talking about Texas, because that's where I live. Texas, I think, may be the new capital of the new America, and Texas will flourish in the absence of the federal regime of money printing and looting and war and the military industrial complex. because Texas has affordable energy and is not afraid to tap into it. Affordable energy and honest money makes for an abundant society.
That's right. Talk to me about the energy independence of your state and how that would look in the future, because I do see, and I speak to a lot of people like yourself that I consider to be, visionaries, and everybody's seeing this civil union, this civil war, sort of a breakup. Maybe it doesn't get kinetic. I think there'll be some kinetic activity, mostly because the owners of this planet want it. They need to see America go and dissolve into complete, chaos, so they can send the UN blue helmets, which those troops are here. We have plenty of Chinese that have come across the border that are military age men. You've reported on it. We've all reported on it. We've showed videos ad nauseum. So I think we're going to see this civil war, and say we're going to see the breakup of the Union. So if Texas were to be the first to secede, and you have the right to do so by your own constitution and the treaty between the U.S. and Great Britain, what does that look like for the people of Texas, and how do they come together? Because you still do have a lot of illegals in your state. You're full of them. How are you going to manage that crisis? Is it going to become a mass deportation process, or are you going to say, you know what, you're here, you're going to work. If you have any hope of staying, you're going to contribute at this level. And does it become a managed forced labor? What does it look like?
Wow. Well, a lot of questions there, but
I know, but I'm thinking all these things through. Sorry.
It starts with honest money. You got to have honest money to rebuild. And from that, then energy is absolutely critical. Of course, Texas is strong in energy, although I would say that refineries are very vulnerable to sabotage. It's easy to take down a refinery.
Does militia stand up and start protecting your refineries to make sure that they don't get taken out to the best of their ability? I mean, how do you protect that?
Yeah, probably so. But drones can be very effective. Drones with explosives are very hard to stop with a ground-based militia or local law enforcement. So refineries would be one of the targets. However, Texas has actually diversified a lot into even wind power, believe it or not. There's a tremendous amount of wind power in North Texas that's feeding the grid. I'm not a huge fan of wind power because not only does it chop up birds that are flying by, but also it's not reliable because the wind doesn't always blow. But in any case, there is diversity of power in Texas. However, Texas has really an unlimited supply of natural gas and oil and offshore oil, and the technology and the willingness to use it. But in terms of the people who are already here, I want to be very clear about this. Texas is very welcoming to legal immigrants, and especially those who are Hispanic in their ethnicity. And Texas would not be Texas without Hispanic Texans. Okay, and just want to be clear. None of us in Texas, not the people that I know, would want to round up people who are here, honestly, legally, and working and actually contributing to society. But we want to get rid of the criminal element. And hunting down those people through law enforcement, anybody who's engaged in child trafficking, weapons trafficking, drug trafficking, as far as I'm concerned, there's going to be some very harsh times for those people. Yeah. There are probably going to be state bounties offered. You go find these traffickers, you bring them to us, you're going to get 5,000 new Texas dollars, by the way. And then we're going to, the state is going to do whatever is appropriate at that time, whatever the justice system says, or deport them, what have you. Get all those people out of here. If there are people here who are right now established in society, given the collapse of the country, given that Texas would be a whole new state, I would imagine, and I don't know where I would fall on this, but I would imagine there would be an effort to try to have some discernment, who gets amnesty, who's here, who's working, who contributes and will defend Texas, and who gets booted out because they're parasites on society. That debate is going to happen, and we'll just have to see how it plays out. I don't know how it's going to look.
Does the stress of the illegal immigration really lean into the people who believe in the Republic of Texas and saying it's time that we stand back up the Republic of Texas? Does that conversation ever weigh in on the hearts and minds of the people in your community? How do we decouple from this corrupt corporate regime in the state of Texas run by Governor Abbott?
Well, yes, but Ann, there's a critical thing, and you've run up against this as well. The masses of Texans have not yet had their lives sufficiently interrupted to pay attention.
Right.
So as long as they can still go to the grocery store, as long as they can still get gas, as long as they can still turn on TV and watch their NFL playoffs or whatever, then they're not going to pay attention to this. The day is going to come when none of those things are available. No gas, no groceries, no power, no TV. That's the day when people will wake up, obviously, out of necessity and say, what just happened? What do we need to do to get our lives back? That day's coming, but it's not here yet. Most of the people are still oblivious.
They are still oblivious, but the problem with that day coming and hearing about this kind of information from you repetitively over the years, if they haven't downloaded your book on prepping and kept a physical copy of it, the day will come when they need it, but there'll be no way to access it because they won't be prepared. They won't have backup power.
Well, even if they had knowledge, the supply chain will have collapsed at that point. You won't be able to prep.
You won't be able to prep. That's exactly right. So give me your top 10 things, you don't have to be exact on 10, but your top items that you have for preparation right now.
Well, obviously backup money supplies. So, gold and silver are always good to consider. A little bit of cash isn't a bad idea either. Energy.
The fiat kind, the kind that we don't care if we need to turn it into kindling at some point.
Yeah, exactly. It's in the early days of the collapse, it will still be recognized by most Americans. Cash can still get you by, but then the transition will move into gold and silver coins or whatever the new state currency happens to be if you still have a state. But right. you need a source of energy. You need energy in order to pump water. You need energy, to run a refrigerator, air conditioner. Can you imagine living in Texas without air conditioning? It's going to be hell, right?
Not any more than I can live in Florida without air conditioning. Yeah, so yes, I agree. It is going to be hell.
Right. You're going to be swimming in a humid soup of Floridian hell there. But
it's like an aquarium some days, but hey, I can be a fish.
And the thing is, all the modern housing was built with the reliance on a lot of energy consumption. Whereas if you go back to the 1960s construction in Florida or Texas, the homes were built to have a lot of airflow through them where you could actually survive that. That's not the way they're built today. So you'll cook in modern housing. But backup energy means you should consider getting like a 500-gallon diesel tank if it's legal to have it on your property. And then get 500 gallons of diesel, get yourself a small diesel tractor, something like 20 to 45 horsepower, and then get a PTO generator that connects to your tractor. And that generator, like you can get easily a 15 kilowatt generator. As long as you feed a diesel into your tractor, you've got power. And you only need about 30 horsepower tractor to generate 15 kilowatts of power. Mm-hmm. And those tractors are not that expensive. And then you also have an implement that you can use for growing food. You can get small attachments on the tractor. You can move dirt around. You can, have a tiller, whatever. It's a multi-purpose setup for small farms or small properties, maybe at least a couple of acres or more. So that's a great idea. Obviously, you need self-defense. Obviously, you need some kind of night vision. If you don't have night vision, you're going to be overrun by people who do have night vision at some point. Right. So you need just basic night vision, like a PVS 14. You need to know how to run it, and you need a night vision enabled optics on a rifle. And so you're going to need, very, very good rifle skills, not just pistol training, but rifle training. And I'm not even talking about shotguns. I'm talking about rifles. That's what you use to defend property is rifles. And then you're going to need ammo for those rifles. And I always laugh when people say, "Oh, I'm all prepared. I've got 500 rounds of ammo." Like, okay, you're talking to a Texan here.
5,000 and we'll start talking. Okay.
Yeah, like I've got 500 that I lost track of last time I practiced. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've got 500 sitting in the back of my ranch vehicle that I forgot about.
Right.
You're going to need a lot more ammo than that. Yeah. And it's not just for your own use, but it's also, think about the community. You're going to need to help your local community reestablish a rule of law in order to have trade, in order to have transportation, in order to rebuild society that allows you to flourish. You're going to have to trade with people. Commerce is one of the keys of rebuilding society. How do you protect commerce? Ammo. You're going to have a lot of ammo and firearms in the hands of men and women who want to rebuild society. And they're going to be doing things like shooting looters, by the way. New justice is going to be rather rapid.
It's a common occurrence on the high seas right now in the Indian Ocean. This happens regularly as you go around. They're constantly going on and pirating ships. So, and we're shooting them. Not me and you, but pirates get shot back. So yeah, this is where we're headed to, and people just can't wrap their mind around this, Mike. That's the part.
I don't know why. I mean, you're gonna have trade centers set up in town. And you're going to have guard towers that will be constructed by local people. You're going to have riflemen on all the guard towers. And if anybody tries to raid the commerce market, they're going to be shot on sight. And this is how you're going to reestablish the rule of law. Yeah. And you're going to support this, by the way. Those of you watching, you're going to support it.
And you're going to be grateful for those who are trained in this skill set,
yes,
because they're going to be protecting your butt when it comes. And unfortunately, what we're seeing right now is we are being burdened by a group of people who have been lied to and lured here, in addition to those that came here with bad intentions to be part of the dissolution of this country, right? These are the true invaders, the military-age men I'm talking about. And unfortunately, we are going to be thrust into this situation a lot sooner than we would want to have ever been, but it is going to completely collapse all aspects of society. And I think it's going to be a really rude wake-up call to the civilized world here in this country, but also to those who came from communities and countries that are just like what they left, they're going to find here rapidly. And honestly, Mike, I know you've driven around this country. I've done a lot of driving around America. And I just was in Pennsylvania speaking recently, leaving Philly Airport and driving out into Amish country. And I cried in the car when I saw the state of Pennsylvania, particularly in the cities and outside the cities. It looks like a third world bombed out Iraq. It is unbelievable. And people are living in squalor. And I see it everywhere when I drive across the country. And unfortunately, the only places that these people can afford to live when they finally do get kicked out of the migrant centers is they have to, buddy up with 3, 4, 5, 10 people to afford an apartment or a house on their stipend that they get. And they're going into these communities, and because they don't own it and because they've never earned it, they're not going to care for it. So they're going to continue to contribute to the degradation of these communities. And we're going to become even more bombed out until literally we are being bombed. So no more will America be spreading democracy through their bombs. We will be being bombed ourselves on the recipient end of what our government has done horrifically around the world. And yet the innocent people here, just like the innocent in all these other countries, will be the victims. And it's going to be at the hands of the government that have organized this complete and utter collapse, just so they can rule the world.
That's exactly right. And I want to point out something really important here, because there is a fluidity of roles that happens in these scenarios. Your government won't be able to provide you with anything. But you know who's really, really good at logistics and transportation and delivery? The narcos. Yes, the narcos. Where do you think you get your avocados from? At the grocery store. I buy a lot of avocados.
I know you love them.
I'm drinking my avocados right here today. Yeah. The narcos run the avocado trade out of Michoacan and other provinces, around Mexico, other states. And what you're going to see, by the way, is in the collapse of society, especially in places like Texas, you're going to see some narcos actually shift roles, because they're going to realize that they can make more money providing diesel and clean water and milk and eggs to people, because the premiums will be so high on that they can leave. Some of them will do this. They'll leave the world of gun trafficking and human trafficking, and they'll just become like grocery logistics experts. Seriously.
Yeah, I agree.
There's this fluidity. And so it's important to understand the structure of society. It needs to incentivize the things that help people, and it needs to punish the things that hurt people. So if there's a narco that says, hey, I'm in this new collapsed society, I could risk my life and keep trafficking children and probably get shot by the new sheriff in town, or I could just start delivering, beef to people who are desperate for it, and that's not even illegal, and it's going to make a fortune. So you're going to see that happen. You're going to see a whole new kind of entrepreneurship taking place as people's needs have to be met through a new network distribution system.
And won't it be ironic when we finally, I think that's the point when the American people, and frankly people around the world, will recognize that it was the United States government that were the criminals all along. They were part of a massive worldwide RICO criminal syndicate of governments worldwide that have been oppressing and basically tyrannical to their people for hundreds, if not thousands of years. It's just evolved now to where we think it's civilized and our buildings are fancy and we have these meetings and we look important in our suits and blah, blah, blah. But they're nothing more than glorified terrorists and criminals that are sitting up there working for foreign corporations. And now I think exactly, you're right. These criminals, like the mafia, will become the police of your community, and they'll be protecting your community because they can profit off your community legally for once. And guess who's not going to like it? The FDA,
That's right.
the government agencies. Your government will be trying to regulate these people. Isn't that going to be an interesting war?
Well, you're going to see the new states declare that their citizens will no longer pay taxes to the federal government, because
Yes.
you're going to see a federal effort to try to rise out of the ashes, and they'll say, well, Texas, you owe us all these taxes. And then whoever is like the leader of Texas at the time is going to say, nope, we're no longer paying tribute to the federal government. And then you're probably going to see a declaration of, if there are any federal tax collectors found in the new Republic of Texas, they will be arrested on sight.
Yeah.
And, the things like that will happen in the reconstruction after a collapse.
Right.
So it's going to get interesting.
Well, this is how I'd like to end the show. You basically highlighted a very silver lining, no pun intended, silver and gold lining at the end of this, because through COVID and that silver lining, we found people all around the world that are just like us. And now we have our nest of people. We have our community locally and worldwide of people that will help each other. And we recognize what's coming, and we're learning and sharing best practices. And, if predictions, and yours seem to always turn true, Mike, if your predictions of the narco-terrorists becoming, grocery logistic experts and will provide food and continuity of, sustenance to the people who are starving around the planet, or particularly here in the States, it is going to be an unusual turn of events, but you're going to see, I think that's going to usher in a next level flourishing in our country of being truly self-sustainable without government interference. And we've always been that. We've now become slaves, and we're a captive audience to these agencies that have been poisoning us. And we're going to liberate ourselves from the toxic food. We're going to liberate ourselves from these crazy agencies that are trying to kill us. And we're going to liberate ourselves from the tax man, who's nothing more than a thug that has weapons behind him and will take you to jail if you don't pay your stipend, your taxes.
And let me show you this. Your money's not going to be green anymore. It's probably going to look closer to this. Your money's going to be gold.
Yep.
Or it might be a state-sponsored crypto, which will be backed by some form of gold. Or your money might be silver, or your money might be garden seeds, or 9mm ammo, or 5.56 ammo, what have you. The green is going to be gone. And the people who are left holding dollars will be destitute virtually overnight. Okay? Gerald Celente has been correct about this for decades. The dollar is going to zero. And if you don't get out of the dollar before that happens, you will lose everything. That's right. The dollar's going to zero. Treasuries are going to zero. Most bonds, the stock market is going to take a massive hit. We're going to see the absolute destruction of highly leveraged, debt-based finance virtually overnight. And everything's going to shift in your society. And the people who actually have anything of value are going to be those who have gold and silver and maybe certain forms of crypto that can't be counterfeited.
Yeah. And ammo, lots of ammo.
And ammo, yeah, for sure.
Mike Adams, Health Ranger, you are extraordinary. You're just a hero to millions because you're brilliant. You provide useful, pertinent information, a plan, and you give without expectation of return, which is really quite lovely and quite unusual in today's environment. And for that, I'm grateful. Thank you for your time today on this important episode here on the Brighteon documentary series on Operation Burning Edge, in continuation of the Brighteon Bright film, 17 Miles. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ann. Take care.